Earlier this month, the US Air Force announced plans to equip a small group of F-16 Fighting Falcons with artificial intelligence pilots. This effort, dubbed Project Venom, aims to do more than just equip crewed fighters with AI-piloted wingmen. It wants to stick AI in the cockpit right there alongside human operators. Let's dive into what this program is and what it means for the future of air combat. I'm Alex Hollings, and this is Air Power. So we all know how much the DoD loves a good acronym, but if you ask me, Project Venom is a shining example of a backronym. When you start with the words you want your acronym to spell and sort of work backwards from there. And that's probably how we got Project Viper Experimentation and Next Gen Operations Mode, which is the technical name for the Air Force's new program to add artificial intelligence to a half dozen F-16s. Project Venom is just the latest development in the Air Force's Skyborg autonomous aircraft teaming architecture program, which aims to pair crewed fighters with AI-enabled drone wingmen for the 21st century fight. The Air Force is investing heavily into this concept, with a reported $50 million allocated to Venom alone in 2024. Now, a great deal of new information was revealed about Project Venom earlier this month in an online webinar hosted by the Mitchell Institute for Aerospace Studies. But I want to tell you the truth, I missed this webinar, so I want to give credit to Emma Helfrich over at the War Zone for her excellent reporting on this topic that included a lot of quotes that I drew from when putting together this write-up. Now, anytime we talk about putting AI in the cockpit, people assume the plan is to use that to pull human pilots out of them. But that's not really the case, especially at the stage that Project Venom is currently at. Right now, Project Venom's goal is to stick AI agents, as they're called, in the cockpits of 6 F-16s out of Eglin Air Force Base in Florida. Now, these AI agents are going to ride right alongside human pilots, and the goal is to use these aircraft in a variety of test operations to gather useful data on manned-unmanned teaming concepts, but also to help foster higher levels of trust between these AI pilots and human fighter pilots that'll still be at the center of American air combat operations for a very long time to come. Now, this program will ultimately feed into the Air Force's Next Generation Air Dominance family of systems, which is the branch's next generation stealth air superiority fighter in active development. And while we don't know a ton about the NGAD fighter so far, we do know that it's expected to fly with a constellation of drone wingmen for support. In fact, according to statements made by Air Force Secretary Frank Kendall just a few months ago, we can expect that NGAD fighters, as well as Block 4 F-35s, will all fly with at least 2 drone wingmen in support in the future. And the Navy's F/A-XX fighter program, also in development, is expected to pull from this same concept for its own drone support wingman operations. But there is a ton of technology and testing that'll have to go into this sort of capability, and Project Venom aims to start walking so future AI agents can run. These Venom AI F-16s will fly routine testing operations to help define the best ways that humans and machines can work together, all while also helping a small group of pilots develop some familiarity with AI agents in the cockpit alongside them, because if they're going to trust their lives to AI wingmen and AI co-pilots in the future, that trust has to start somewhere. Now, Project Venom is one of 3 different ongoing Air Force programs that are all aimed at equipping modernized F-35s and the next generation of fighters with their own AI-enabled support drones to extend sensor reach and generally increase their combat capability. Alongside Venom, the Air Force is continuing similar work in the Collaborative Combat Aircraft, or CCA program, and within the Experimental Operations Unit, or EOU team. Now, these efforts all have a great deal of overlap by design. The CCA program has been described as the brainchild of that aforementioned Air Force Secretary, Frank Kendall. And you can really think of it as that broader overarching initiative to couple crewed and uncrewed aircraft for future combat operations. The EOU team, on the other hand, is tasked with developing the real tactics and procedures that are required to accomplish this goal. And Project Venom, as the Air Force's chief scientist, Dr. Victoria Coleman, puts it, can be seen as the bridge between the two. I'll quote her here. With Venom, we'll take 6 F-16s and kit them out with an autonomous safety box, where we'll be able to drop in autonomy code and have a human pilot experiment with it and fly with it to make sure that A, it works, and B, that it has benefits that we can expect the autonomy to deliver operationally. Now, Project Venom will build directly on the Air Force's recently disclosed successes using AI to fly their X-62A Vista, which is short for Variable Stability In-Flight Simulator Test Aircraft. The X-62A flew in a series of air combat exercises with AI in control this past December. But while the thrust-vectoring X-62A is a downright bonkers aircraft, it's important to remember that it's based on a Block 30 F-16D, which is an iteration of the famed Viper that entered service all the way back in the late 1980s. The X-62A, which was previously known as the NF-16D, is an experimental testbed equipped with a multi-axis thrust vectoring, or MATV, engine nozzle, similar to those employed by super maneuverable Russian fighters like the Su-35. But this isn't some crazy maneuverable F-16 concept. No, it's a lot weirder than that. It couples the incredible control offered by that thrust vectoring nozzle to a unique fly-by-wire system that's meant to emulate the in-flight behavior of really any aircraft that you can imagine. And that allows a pilot to climb into the X-62A and take to the skies feeling like they're in control of anything from a C-130 to an F-22 Raptor, or whatever you can imagine in between. Now, that unique form of computer control made the X-62A very well suited to have an AI agent just sort of plugged into its onboard systems, making it the logical and economic first choice for this effort. But despite the crazy things the X-62A can do, it is not a combat aircraft, and as a result, it doesn't carry any of the modern combat systems that today's F-16s use in the fight. I'll go ahead and quote General Durtian again. The Vista aircraft is great for the control development, and we kind of have the safety wrapper to develop autonomy. But what we don't have on the aircraft is a lot of sensors. So by getting the autonomy engine on the Venom aircraft, you now have an active electronically scanned array radar. You have electronic warning, and you have all those things that can expand the autonomy algorithm to react to the inputs that it's getting to make decisions for yourself. But while the clear intent of Project Venom is to develop an AI agent that's capable of managing the complexity of air combat operations, this effort is still very much maturing. Initially, these AI-enabled F-16s will not be diving straight into advanced fighter maneuvers, because just like any new pilot, they need time to develop a mastery of their aircraft. Project Venom's AI still has a lot to learn. But while class is in session for the AI, its human counterparts will also be studying how best to put those new skill sets offered by AI into the fight alongside their human operators as this program continues to mature. I'm going to quote Dr. Coleman again. Self-driving cars didn't go from fully manual to fully automated, right? The Teslas and all the other electric vehicles, they've traveled millions or billions of miles where they learned and figured out how to interface with a human operator and to do so safely and securely. We don't get to skip that part in the Air Force. So Venom is precisely that capability that allows us to bridge the gulf from one state to the other. And of course, the technical challenges inherent to creating a system that can fly a nimble F-16 in combat are significantly larger than those of a self-driving car. Not only do aircraft add an additional axis of movement, vertical as well as horizontal, and an immense increase in speed, but they're also often shot at by extremely fast and capable surface-to-air and air-to-air missiles. Before Project Venom's F-16s can take on the rigors of such a mission, they first have to nail down the basics. I'll quote the general again. What the F-16 allows us to focus on, since it's a crewed fighter, we can work on getting the aircraft to and from the airspace to develop autonomy there, and also in the airspace to work on the manned teaming and uncrewed operation. So I think it's a natural evolution from everything you've seen before. Of course, even with AI-piloted aircraft quickly becoming a reality, the intent behind efforts like Project Venom is still not to replace human pilots, but rather to supplement them with artificial intelligence agents, not just in wingman roles, but inside the cockpit as well. The United States currently has 2 publicly disclosed 6th-generation stealth fighter programs in active development, both of which are expected to operate as families of systems, with crewed fighters flying alongside AI-enabled drones tasked with a variety of combat operations, ranging from intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, or ISR, to electronic warfare, to kinetic strike operations. The concept of using a constellation of drones, each taking their cues from a human pilot at the center of an airborne network, promises to turn each pilot into an entire formation unto themselves, dramatically increasing combat capability and capacity. But even if the Pentagon can work out all the circuitry and programming involved, they still face one more hurdle: the cognitive load all this added capability will place on its fighter pilots. Now, the cockpit of today's F-35 already represents a huge leap forward in managing the mental workload of flying a high-performance fighter deep behind enemy lines, streamlining the dozens of gauges and readouts that normally litter a fighter pilot cockpit into a combination of helmet-mounted displays and large interactive touchscreens. But even with all of the F-35's sensor-fusing computing power, pilots are still tasked with managing the complex functions of a jet-powered aircraft, flying at the hairy edge of their capability, while simultaneously keeping track of targets, friendlies, potential threats, and a great deal more. I mean, we all already know how dangerous it is to text and drive, but imagine if you were driving at 700 plus miles per hour and you needed to keep tabs on 2 large iPads in front of you that were letting you know not only whether or not your engine was going to continue to function, but whether or not there were problems with your car, because if a problem did arise, you would almost certainly die. And then add to that some of the other cars are shooting at you, and you not only need to avoid being hit, but need to reliably target and shoot back. And believe it or not, that just accounts for junior level wingmen, because the senior airmen are also tasked with giving orders to the rest of the formation and keeping tabs on everything that's going on, not only with your own aircraft, but with all of your wingmen as well. Now consider adding drones to that mix, and you can really understand why cognitive load is a huge issue for fighter pilots. And these pilots aren't flying along a familiar route to work or the grocery store. They're often flying in very unfamiliar territory, and it's important to remember that they're still human beings. And as a result, sometimes the realities of warfare can cause problems. I recently had a conversation with F-35 pilot Hazard Lee, and we talked about cognitive load and how it's especially challenging for younger pilots. He explained that inexperienced pilots sometimes get so caught up in the mission at hand that they end up making some pretty serious mistakes.
You know, our job is to be a little bit detached and to kind of see the big picture. It's easy to get sucked into, the moment, the soda straw, as we call it. And so we're trying to kind of try and distance ourselves a little bit so that we can see the big picture. And this happens to new wingmen all the time. They hear there's a troops in contact situation, and they just get so locked into it that they fly into a mountain or aren't able to assess, should we drop this danger close munition, or should we do a show of force?
This real limit to human ability has led to a fighter pilot culture that places a huge emphasis on managing cognitive load by using a combination of mental training and active focus to allow for rapid but sound decision making. And while we're on that subject and talking about Hazard, I should let you know that he's got a new book coming out about how to use fighter pilot decision making skills in your regular everyday life. That is not a sponsor. Hazard's just a rad guy, and you should go support him. I'll include a link in the description. But this really does represent a constant challenge, even in today's advanced and highly automated F-35s. And that challenge will only grow as pilots are increasingly tasked with issuing orders to AI-enabled wingmen waiting to take their cues from the human operators flying nearby. It's because of this issue of focus that artificial intelligence won't be relegated only to those drone wingmen. It will also be flying right alongside human pilots, right there in the cockpit. Once these AI agents have a thorough understanding of how to manage routine flight operations, gained through efforts like Project Venom, they will increasingly be able to take over standard flight duties from those human operators, freeing up the pilot's time and focus for more pressing matters, like combat. AI co-pilots could fly the aircraft along its intended route while pilots survey the battle space, using the full breadth of their onboard sensor suite. The AI can react to inbound surface-to-air missiles faster than a human could, and even employ countermeasures when the aircraft is in jeopardy. But before artificial intelligence can empower human pilots to focus on the battle rather than on flying their plane, American pilots have to learn to trust them. And that's a big part of what Project Venom and previous AI efforts have been all about. And the only way to create that trust, really, is to consistently demonstrate the value of these AI systems to real pilots and then just wait for culture to catch up. This time, I'll quote Brigadier General Dale R. White, who's the Air Force Program Executive Officer for Fighters and Advanced Aircraft. It goes back foundationally to that trust in autonomy, right? This is where it starts now. We're going to integrate into the F-16. We're going to start practicing with our algorithms, leveraging all those things and the previous work that's been done, understanding that foundationally we'll have that autonomous engine, and then we'll have to continue algorithm development. Nearly 3 years ago now, DARPA held their Alpha Dogfight trials, which were a series of AI versus AI dogfights that culminated in the most capable AI agent, an entrant from Heron Systems, being pitted against a human F-16 pilot in a guns-only dogfight held entirely within the digital realm. Now, as you probably already know, the AI won an overwhelming victory over the human pilot, and the media really touted this as a step towards putting those sorts of pilots out of the job. But the truth is, according to DARPA, even that program was really aimed at teaching pilots that AI can be a benefit, really more than anything else. But before we close, I want to address a question I'm sure some people will ask, and that's why not just use remotely piloted aircraft? After all, the Air Force already operates a vast fleet of them. Aircraft like the MQ-9 Reaper, for instance, are able to loiter over a target area for more than 24 hours, but they are not automated. Reapers are controlled by two-person teams made up of a licensed pilot and an enlisted sensor operator that switch out every 8 hours or so. This approach has proven consistently effective in ISR and even attack operations, in which the MQ-9s engage targets on the ground with munitions like the AGM-114 Hellfire missile, or even its highly specialized sword-packing variant, the R9X. So if remotely piloted models work for air-to-ground operations, what's stopping the Air Force from just incorporating that capability into more nimble fighter support drones? Well, there are certainly a number of challenges inherent to such an effort, but the biggest one that AI can help overcome is lag. According to an MQ-9 pilot I spoke to back in 2021, who asked that he be identified only as Captain Dennis for security reasons, it takes about 1.2 seconds for the video and sensor feeds from the MQ-9 to reach him at his control station. Once he sees something on the screen that warrants a response, he inputs the commands, and it takes another 1.2 seconds for those commands to relay all the way back to that airborne Reaper on the other side of the globe. As a result, there's usually a 2 to 3 second delay or more between when the MQ-9 spots a threat and when it can actually react to it. In a slow-moving, prop-driven Reaper flying in uncontested airspace, that 3 seconds isn't that big of a deal. But in air combat, life-or-death decisions are made in fractions of a second. These concerns about lag and signal integrity are all but eliminated when equipping an uncrewed aircraft with AI that allows it to make rapid decisions on its own. Of course, it's really important to remember here that that decision-making ability is not consciousness, as it's so often depicted not just in science fiction, but in headlines all over the internet. What these AI agents really are is a computer program that's able to rapidly analyze a situation, compare it to hundreds of thousands of hours of previous flight data, and quickly determine the right course of action for their circumstances based on what they've seen pilots do in the past. AI agents in control of aircraft are, to some extent, really just a search engine that sorts through a massive list of if-then statements, choosing the right ones for the situation and then executing. If a surface-to-air missile is launched from behind the aircraft, then deploy countermeasures and execute maneuvers, and so forth. The more experiential data these systems have to pull from, the more robust their ability to execute complex tasks become. But they're still not conscious, living things that are making decisions so much as comparing their situation to past situations and picking the right answer. Project Venom is just one aspect of a much broader effort to incorporate artificial intelligence into the modern battlefield. But while this effort isn't necessarily in its infancy, it's still got a long way to go before we could call it mature. Getting to that point will require logging lots of hours in aircraft like Venom's F-16s and the X-62A, as well as future efforts in a variety of other crewed and uncrewed aircraft. But the timetable is rapidly accelerating. I'll quote Dr. Coleman again. The neat thing is that you can do it really quickly. It usually takes a very long time to certify software to fly in airplanes. If you were to wait for that, maybe you would do one drop a year. Venom enables us to do tens of thousands of cold drops per week. So it's really a fundamental kind of capability that bridges and accelerates that transition from fully manned to this mixed mode. Human-machine teaming. And that is about as crazy a point as one can get to close on. And thus ends yet another edition of Air Power from Sandbox News. I'm Alex Hollings. Make sure you swing by sandboxnews.com today and every day for all the latest in news, entertainment, and motivation from all around the force. If you got anything out of today's video, make sure to click like and subscribe down below, and leave me a comment so I know what I should cover next. And don't forget to tap on that bell icon so you never miss a drop from Sandbox News.